Welcome to the latest episode of Flex That Worx. Today we're joined by Jack Regan from Trend 7 Media. We're delighted to have Jack here today because, spoiler alert, he runs our podcast for us. And we thought, who better to have on to give some pointers and tips to people running co-working spaces than the genius himself around marketing and growing your business and retaining your existing members. Great to have you here, Jack.
Thanks very much, Anne-Marie and Graham. Delighted to be here after all this time. Genius is a strong word now, so I don't want to let the listeners down too much, but we'll
Setting
give it
the
our best.
expectations. So, Jack, we know that a lot of people who'd be listening to the podcast would be in co-working spaces of lots of different types and sizes. And I know you worked in marketing, supporting operators in different types of localities, different types of member bases. So if you could give us some examples of things that spaces might like to be thinking about for the next couple of months.
That's a great question. I think it actually comes back to what the space stands for. And I speak about it, week in, week out in the pod, but it's the same element that applies to your marketing efforts. So I would go back to basics, and before looking at the marketing, I'd say, what's the space goals? Like, is it for profit or not for profit? Defining those kind of KPIs from a business perspective and treating it like an organization that it is, whether it's one space or you have multiple locations. Everybody will have goals for the year, whether it be commercial or they're for impact. So if you're looking at the commercial ones and you're looking at members, you're setting it down like, how many members do we need, or are we going down the hot desking route? How many hot deskers do we need to get? And you're looking at your kind of monthly reports over the years. You should have some data to kind of suggest that maybe in a space in coastal areas, the summer is going to be your busiest time for hot deskers in July and August, and you need to account for membership maybe this now time of the year, January or February. You want to get full-time members in a few spaces. So before doing the marketing for a co-working space or any business in general, you'd be looking at what are your objectives for the year ahead, and then break that down in terms of how is marketing going to contribute to that. And you can kind of take that in different ways. So if we're looking at trying to get new members in, you want to be speaking, like an easy one is like showcase the members that are already enjoying your space. So we've seen it work well for spaces is utilizing stories and the human element. It's the top performing content across it, and you probably seen something similar yourselves in terms of they do it in large B2B organizations where you're a software company, or you do it as a co-working space. Showcase people. They're your biggest asset.
So it's one of the reasons we built in the blogs module to the system that we have. Was exactly that, because we found that hub managers, again, we understand how many hats they wear on a daily basis, and getting around to do the blog or do the social media marketing, they always seem to the jobs that kind of get thrown into the end of the day after you out in all the fires and everything else. So what we did was with the system was we realized that every space, as you said, is full of its own stories, full of its own colourful characters. So we've enabled those people to share the stories and then pump those for approval by the hub manager to fire those out. So it's interesting to say that. So Jack, tell me what kind of, I suppose, what are the kind of stories that people like to hear more of? Is it more behind the scenes stories? Is it more success stories? What are you seeing had the greatest traction?
Back to it again is looking at the member type that you have. Who is your space for? If it's a very entrepreneurial startup ecosystem, and there's plenty of those in Ireland and across the world as well. But if it's an incubator type space, you're going to be looking at more success stories. So this company founder, no business, just had an idea, went through our program, we connected them then to Enterprise Ireland or the Leos first, and there's kind of a stepping stone for them. So they kind of want to nearly imagine themselves being that success story as well. You're going to sell that dream, or that it's, in touching distance by becoming a member of the space. So for that type of thing, I think a success story, case study of a, successful startup, similar to their own. If you're looking at just a usual co-working space, and the members is diverse, rural, remote workers, mixture of entrepreneurs like the space we're in here in Ludgate, then I think just actually telling the real stories of the people that share the space and that diverse nature of it, whether you're working for a large corporate as a remote worker and you're working online, you have a very different reason to use the space than someone who's in here for their own business perspective, and they'd have different stories and reasons why. You just want to kind of share that ideally on video that's kind of laid back, suits your space. Make the content suit the vibe of your space. So if it's very corporate, then you should probably keep that image going and keep a video that is reflective of that. But if it's more laid back, then take a video and have them sitting down in the kitchen or something like that.
Jack, you mentioned at the top there about commercial impact for the business and social impact for the business. The commercial impact, we all know that, pounds and pennies and figures and gross profit, net profit, all that kind of stuff is fairly easy to calculate. Give us a bit more insight into social impact and what kind of conversations happen around that, and what's categorized as impact from a co-working perspective.
You have your community element, obviously, because there'd be, especially in rural spaces, probably better fixed to speak about that than maybe the city centres, because just don't live there and don't know the lay of the land as well. But especially in rural places where a lot of co-working spaces are, you're looking at ideally reaching out to the community. A lot of times the space came in, it was an old building, got redone, and now people don't know what it is anymore. They still think it's that other thing. Like, our space was a lot of different things in different lifetimes. It was a cinema, then it was a bakery, and I'm pretty sure the team here still got inquiries at times to say, can I get a sliced pan or something like that, which you must be sick of hearing it. So I think getting out there, just go back to the very simple stuff, actually, not even social media marketing. Go outside your front door and start going door to door to local businesses in your area and start getting that community feel. Start creating stuff for them that supports your local town. That can be a form of community impact and social impact, where you're actually bettering the lives, or you're showcasing the top businesses and kind of giving them awareness to a new audience, which is bringing value and impact to them in terms of maybe when someone comes down on holidays, they check out the coffee shop because they saw it in your co-working space. That would be kind of the community impact, and trying to get involved where it makes sense and as much as you can.
A lot of your social impact is from the community outside the four walls that you're sitting in here, is what you're saying?
I think so, from my experience, because I think the impact you can have from within the members as well, they then have an opportunity, whether it's community events, if it's food festivals or music festivals or whatever it might be, chances are they'll be going to the exact same things on the weekend as well. Everyone might go to the farmers market on a Saturday morning, whatever it might be. Chances are they'll go to something else you're organising.
Yeah, so we've all bumped into each other at the farmers market, And it was interesting you said the food festival. I mean, that's a great example. I know the guys that ran the local food festival used this as their HQ. It's a thing that happens once a year. But for the few weeks leading up to it, they were using this place as a hub. So that's something to consider as well, Anne Marie, as we go forward. The seasonality of people using the space for initiatives that aren't necessarily going to be all year round. I suppose there is that kind of temporary business as well you can tap into.
Absolutely. Speaking of stories, Jack, can I ask, if you took over marketing, right, for a single location co-working space tomorrow, and you were tasked with driving uptake either of tours or new members, say in the first kind of 30 days, what would you look to do?
So in the first week of that 30 days, I would basically go around to everybody who's in my space that week and say, I need you for a video and I need you for some photos as well, because that would be the most impactful form of content across. I think if you go to any analytics account, you can see the same for yours as well. Anything with people in it, sharing stories will gather the most impact. The highly designed infographic and stuff don't really strike a chord with people. They just go past it. But if they see, geez, that person looks familiar, they're looking at it, they're listening to it, they're engaged. So I would go all out with that strategy. It's going to be difficult for the operator. Chances are, if you're doing the marketing yourself and you're just the sole operator, you can still do it. You don't need a marketing team or a marketing person to assist you. Just get your phone. It's if you have any decent iPhone or Android, it's going to be more than enough than what you need. Get a wireless mic, something cheap from the local store. We're all about supporting local, so go to your local electronics or computer hardware shop, repair shop, whatever it might be. Get a wireless mic. Get the bonus in it be getting a tripod or a gimbal, something that you can just hold that steadies the phone, and ideally record that in a landscape. So if you're framing those interviews, keep them short, get a photo, get a minute video, with as many members as you can. And then for the last 3 weeks of that 30 days, I would be posting it. And like from what I've seen, it depends on your member type, depending on the platforms you want to use for social. So like Facebook is fantastic for community, like local community impact, and you can get fantastic results on that in terms of impressions, interactions. So don't sleep on Facebook.
That's
That'd be
interesting.
yeah, like I've seen it for a load of local brands over the years. It'd be their best performing platform by a country mile. Like it's unbelievable the impact it can drive, and groups and all that stuff. So
You talked about the hardware, I suppose, and mics and what sometimes it might be worth tapping somebody on the shoulder. They might already have that equipment that they're willing to use, so it might not be an investment piece for the hub manager. I love gadgets, obviously, but then what I love as much as gadgets is software. So in order to execute with things like the editing jack, the posting, what kind of tools would you, simple, off the shelf, I don't want to say cheap, but no, you're not gonna heavy commitment, or what ones would you suggest for a time short hub manager?
So you have two elements to it really. So if you're going down the video route, you're going to need a basic video editor. Like if you go into your album on your phone after recording a video, chances are it just won't let you, make the right adjustments you need to do. Basically, Canva would be your go-to software for creating your graphics, whether that's anything from your social media posts, your banners, to your social media profiles, even elements as well that you might be doing some print stuff. And you can also actually edit some videos in Canva. So if you have the Canva subscription, you could just edit the videos in there. A couple different mobile video editors you can get. Filmora, Wondershare, they have a good mobile app. If you're on the Adobe suite and you have an Adobe, subscription, chances are you have Premiere Pro in there. Just get the Adobe Premiere Pro and start kind of making edits there on your laptop. If it's easier as well, that you don't have to see it on the phone. So if that was the case, you'd be sending them over on a Google Drive, downloading the videos, and then editing on your laptop. You can also just make the edits on your phone as well.
That in itself is overwhelming to someone who's listening. Like just that much is overwhelming. Would you say don't let perfect get in the way of the very good and just post it? Or would you say no, outsource it and don't put up something that's too poor quality, because there is a world in which it damages a brand a little bit if something's not of a certain standard, right? But equally, you don't want to completely overthink it and procrastinate and not post anything either.
There's a balance, I guess. Like you mentioned there, you don't want to be putting out stuff that doesn't reflect what you want to reflect, but at the same time, if you need to get members in, you need to get members in. And to be honest, some of the best performing content out there, it's very relaxed content. It's not perfectly staged. It's shake. If you look at the top videos and different things like that you see in your own social media pages, chances are they weren't thinking about all this. They just kind of pressed record and they said,
okay,
I'll go for it. So there's that element to it as well. But what I would do is, if you can invest an hour, it mightn't be during your work time, you might look at it in the evening. Just go to YouTube, just search up how to edit a simple video, where you got Filmora, Wondershare, CapCut, whatever mobile video editing app that you want to choose and go for. Choose that, own that, pay the little subscription if you need to. It might only be like $4.99, $9.99 a month. You can delete it if you don't, get the use out of 12 months. Usually these things are rolling monthly contracts, so it won't eat into your software costs or margins too much. And just spend an hour checking out the very basics. You don't need to do these mad transitions. Essentially, all you need to do is make some cuts. Cut at the start. So like when you start at, if it's asking the question, or, a bit of chat beforehand, and there's going to be parts in any video that need to be cut out, because not everyone's a news reporter and has the thing in front of them and they can just go like this, like perfectly for 1 minute. And it won't happen like that. People will do ums and ahs. Like we know ourselves here as well. Like sometimes it's worth leaving them in. It's worth leaving them in. It's a bit more natural, to be fair.
You've edited out enough of our stuff now at this stage.
Enough of ums and ahs. And do you know what? I think there's such an opportunity with co-working marketing in particular, because if you think about it, we've come from a world where corporate videos used to be thousands to get done, and it was like 2.5 minutes of perfection with like waiting room music over it. And like most, brands are now coming into the space of handheld, really human videos with mistakes. And Coworking is just sitting at the intersection of those because it's humans in brands. So it just gives a little bit more scope to do really organic stuff and just take it and post it.
Yeah, like I think that would be the main thing, really. I wouldn't worry too much. Like, chances are, if you've got a wireless mic, you've plugged it into your phone, you've connected it via Bluetooth, your phone is of a somewhat decent quality, you're going to get a decent result, without the editing even. The color contrast and all that is just really probably getting in your own way in terms of actually
So
posting the video.
Definitely the measurable, the outcome needs to be like that you did it, at least for the first few, probably until you build a habit, and then start into KPIs of results and everything, and don't be watching the one for the views. Just pick a consistency you can manage and stick with it. In terms, if an operator said, oh geez, but I have so much to do already, right? When it comes to marketing, is there any activity you see people doing that actually doesn't move the needle and you would recommend they just drop and take this up instead?
Like the stuff that people maybe spend time on that is more busy work than actually moving the needle of what's going to get members in to the door. I would say, like, the planning stage, I know it's very important. Like, you want to have strategy, but if you spend, the next 3 months kind of working on strategy, like, you just actually need to get the motion going, because it's the consistency of the work you do, which will matter. Depending on your perception of what quality is, everybody will have a different perception. You're going to be like, if you hold it up to 100% standard, you wouldn't post anything, and therefore nobody's going to know about you. Therefore, you're going to get no members, no revenue, and then you're actually putting the space in a bit of a tricky situation, unless you're getting funding of some sort, of course. But if you're literally depending on member revenue and hot deskers, then you need to start actually posting, and letting that kind of fear and perfection factor go, and kind of worrying too much about the aesthetics right away. Obviously it has a time and place, and you want to reflect it in the best way you can. But I think the over planning, over analyzing, especially in the early days, probably kills more progress.
If I'm a co-working space and I'm full and I have waiting lists, like what's my marketing strategy there? I know, like, we can do like Guinness, right? Like they probably don't need to do marketing in the fact that they're such a well-known brand, right? But they do. They spend bazillions on it. What are you doing if you're a co-working space 95% capacity?
Yeah, so it's looking at the kind of makeup then of your actual members. So, like, if that 95% is split with mainly members, then you need to look at spaces when they're not necessarily in the office as well, or when they're not using the co-working space. And also you're trying to balance the people that, those members could leave as well, and they could churn. They might move. They might find another co-working space. Their job might actually force them to actually not work from the space anymore, and they have to relocate and go back to the office, and that might be in a city centre. So you need to keep an eye on that and make sure that you're engaging the people that want to join or have expressed interest, but there's no space for them right now. So you need to find kind of an engagement strategy for them. So, like, newsletters are a great way of keeping that going. Obviously, social media can do that as well, but the newsletter is a higher form of engagement, and it feels a bit more personal. Besides, like, one to many, this is kind of like one to one. So I would keep them up to date and everything, and I'd also find ways to bring them into the space without directly giving them a seat if they can't have a seat. Like, is there meeting room space you can give out to them? Is there events that you're hosting that you personally invite them to, and try to keep them involved as part of the community without being necessarily here every day? There's lots of ways you can do that in terms of regular events, whether it's workshops, even if it's stuff like the swims and stuff. Like, if they're want to get involved in that, it's not stopping you. In this example, obviously not everyone can go for a swim, but it might be a run club or something you have in the city centre, or grabbing a coffee, or could be a drinks nights, or whatever it might be. Just finding ways to communicate that. And obviously newsletters are great, but groups are great as well, such as like WhatsApp groups and Slacks and whatever community channel you're using. Just keep people in the loop, make them feel part of it, even though they're not right now. And then when something pops up, they're ready to buy, essentially.
Talk to me about the world of newsletters. I mean, historically, MailChimp was the big show in town. I know there's a lot of more offerings out there now when it comes to, newsletters. Any favorites or anything you're kind of seeing there?
They all can have different features, bells and whistles attached to them, and it really depends on, I guess, how much you can spend, and also how much your contact list is. So if you have larger contact lists, some platforms will be more favorable. So you have obviously your MailChimp, you have your ConvertKit, which is now rebranded to Kit. So that's a decent platform. You have Beehive, which is kind of a more of a creator-led one. And then you've had kind of different streams of newsletters starting to make their way that are not directly, I would say, a newsletter, such as Substack, which is kind of like a social platform, but a newsletter app as well. So it can kind of send people updates, say that, you know, Graham and Marie have a new Flex That Worx Substack out. It's kind of like a writing platform. And then you have, if you are a co-working space, chances are you are on LinkedIn to appeal to that kind of business owners, corporate landscape. LinkedIn newsletters are a great way of getting an easy subscriber count to come in. It's very difficult, not very difficult, but it is challenging for people these days to get people off the social platform and sign up for an email newsletter unless they're getting something like a discount code. That might be an incentive, sign up and get 15% off your first hot desk, whatever that might be. But the LinkedIn newsletter, if they're engaging your content, they'll be kind of auto invited, and you can start, doing it for free. Essentially, you can just create one either off maybe it's the CEO of the workspace. They want to create a personal one. That's a really effective way of doing it. But just like that as well, launch it off the company page. So if you have your co-working space and you have a business profile set up, create the LinkedIn newsletter. I wouldn't call it, co-working space newsletter. I would give it a bit of a theme, make it a bit different, give it a brand of its own, almost to kind of deliver what value you want to deliver, not just like the updates and stuff, but if you have a unique point of view, whether you're seeing stuff in the tech space or you're very community driven in arts, use that to your advantage and use that as your kind of your point of view and your kind of positioning to say, we're going to delve into this because we want more members in this area to join our kind of community of arts, for example. Then you chat about that and put that in your LinkedIn newsletter.
I love that because I guess there's an element of bravery in that, and kind of committing to who it is you're speaking to then, because if you're going to go down almost a vertical or kind of narrow down who you're speaking to, there's an element of clarity and kind of commitment in it, which leads me on to asking you about brand, because we talk an awful lot about community and then culture, and it all lends itself to brand. And particularly if you're in a place where there are other co-working spaces, we hear about competition a bit, or spaces looking to kind of define who it is that they want to have coming through the doors so that new members know whether a space is for them or not. How much would you advise an operator to kind of get hung up on brand? How do they know if they have a strong brand? Maybe they just have great imagery and a swanky space, but not much going on underneath that by way of making their members feel seen and heard. So, what's the reality of brand? What are the kind of pointers people should be looking for? How can they cultivate it, or can they?
I think it goes back to, again, like, what do you want to be known for? If you're serving everyone, you're serving no one, essentially. Sometimes it doesn't always have to be job titles or descriptions, that you kind of segment that down. It could be based on location or different things like that. So I definitely think that if you've a wide mix of people, it can work really well as well. But obviously that makes the marketing quite difficult, and then the brand then, because if you want to be known for kind of an entrepreneurial space, it's very difficult then to build that brand, because it's a much different thing than saying we're all about community events and social impact and sustainability. We're seeing the rise now of like sustainable spaces, tech spaces, and you can, before you even, like, that's their brand, like their sustainability space of the country, their whole thing is sustainability, and they want to attract people in different industries that care about that as a value or work like that in the business. So if I was developing a brand, I would say do a bit of work on who you are and who you want to become, essentially, because you mightn't be that just yet, and that's okay. That happens with most businesses. You've all the aspirations to start off and be this brand, but chances are nobody knows about you just yet. But that's the opportunity as well, because you can kind of shape your messaging and iterate and figure it out as you go along, because no one kind of started off with the perfect brand. It takes years of work to kind of cultivate it. And I think it starts too with the members that you have in your space, even if it's just the first few members that are in your space, or also that are working there right now, and you've built up a bit of a community. Let them be your brand advocates. Let them spread the good word, essentially, of how great your place is to work, what you kind of get up to. Like, you can see it here as well. Like, chances are, if you meet someone out here, you tell people you work here, and they'll be like, what's that about? You kind of give them a bit of more insight, and that kind of expands the brand as such in a more organic way than just kind of shouting about it. Most times, if it comes from somebody else, they'll take more notice of it because they'll expect you as a company to shout about your brand. But it's really, I think, what impact you can have on the people. So maybe start there of who's in your space and what messages you're trying to get out there about who you are.
Are there any kind of pitfalls or challenges that you think operators should look out for, particularly around brand or any others?
And I don't know, is it kind of the TikTok era, but I think people have lost track of themselves in some regards to their brand, and they're just trying to jump on whatever comes out to be relevant. I think that's kind of a sure way to not stay relevant. That doesn't signal greatness at all. It just signals that you want to kind of fast money type of approach, really. You want to jump on this and jump on that. And I think TikTok made that kind of popular where you'll just do anything if you get the views. And I don't.
That was a question I was going to have, because we mentioned Facebook, surprisingly enough. We've mentioned LinkedIn, obviously enough. And I was just wondering where Instagram and TikTok, if there's any other that I don't know about, throw those in the mix as well.
Yeah, like I think with the platforms, Instagram is a fantastic one as well. And just like TikTok as well, it's not about essentially the platforms. It's how you use the platforms and I guess the messages that you want to put out there. So when I'm looking at platforms, I'd probably look at different audience groups. You'll have crossovers, but really if you're looking at LinkedIn, it's more business, it's more B2B, it's more corporates. If you're looking at investment, if that's your kind of thing in terms of you need investment for the space. Whereas if you don't need that, then you're looking for maybe B2B people to start using your event space, companies, and you're getting off sites and you want them to use your meeting rooms. And they mightn't be a full-time member, but they might come in once a month and use your, largest kind of suite there, and they book that out for the day, which is good revenue, and you kind of build a relationship with them. I'd be looking at LinkedIn for that. Obviously, like national partnerships and accelerators and all that good stuff, they usually live on LinkedIn as well. Obviously, if you're in that area of upskilling, business development, chances are they'll be posting there. So you want to collaborate with them and be putting your best foot forward on LinkedIn. So if you're branching at that, you're looking very B2B, you're looking very corporate. Facebook then, fantastic platform for community. So there's so many Facebook groups that have been built for the last kind of 10, 15 years. Even here in Skibbereen, there's one that has like over 10,000 members. That's a crazy audience to tap into. And you can tap into those networks that are just free, like they're just there. Like if you had to pay for that coverage for paid media, which is another thing we can chat about as well, in terms of what you do with paid spend. But in terms of organic, like Facebook's fantastic for community. So if you're looking at community impact and still also kind of getting that awareness piece out there with members, Facebook's a brilliant way to do that in terms of collaborating with local businesses, getting to those local community groups as well, like really embedding your part. You're not like a separate thing to the town that it's like, oh, they're over here and we're over here. You should really try and make that first step and, become part of town. You'll be better off for it because the businesses will support you in different things that you'll need, and vice versa. You can support them back, and it creates kind of a business ecosystem in itself, really.
And that works in cities. Yeah, and that works in cities.
Yeah.
Go for your borough, like whatever your smallest area is, that even better, even more of an area in which people like to have an identity and a bit of community forming, Thanks for tuning in to Flex That Worx. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss our next episode. Connect with us on LinkedIn, watch the full episode on YouTube, and you can explore free tools and resources over at baseworks.co. This is Flex That Worx, powered by Baseworks, here to help you scale your workspace, making it simpler and less stressful.